Ever since I was a wee lad, I have been playing trading card games. When I was 11, I moved to a new school and made friends with all the other nerds in my class who introduced me to Yu-Gi-Oh! And ever since those days of carrying around my Treasure the Light and Dark deck in a rubber band in my pocket, I have been enamored with TCGs. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my only game from the ages of 11 to 16, but my true love of trading card games came when I found Magic the Gathering. And this is because Magic was actually how I made a big friend group in college. On my very first day, I was in the cafeteria between classes and I looked over and saw some people playing Magic the Gathering in a corner of the room. I knew that I needed to make friends, and so I bucked up my courage. I went over, introduced myself, told them that I played Magic, and asked them if I could watch. And from that one decision, I met a ton of people, made a lot of really great friends, and found myself falling deeply in love with EDH. Then I dropped out of college halfway through my second year. But I don't regret the time and money that I spent going to school, because that first year was one of the happiest times of my life. For the first time ever, I had a big group of friends and a social setting that I could go to 5 days a week. It was amazing. But as many of us know, once that time is over and you move on and all go your separate ways, life tends to get a lot more lonely. And loneliness goes hand in hand with depression. And I am no stranger to depression. I was heavily abused as a child, to the point where at about the age of 9, I started having suicidal thoughts. That only got worse as I got older, but at least in my early 20s, I started to put my life together and get my mental health in check. But the thing about depression is that it will come back with a vengeance if you let your guard slip and start living your life in a way that welcomes it back. And the biggest thing that I have struggled with in my life that leads to a poor mental state has been loneliness. I like a lot of time alone, but the problem is that I then neglect to make time for friends and family, and this leads me to becoming depressed. And when I become depressed, I become even more of a recluse, which just makes my situation worse, and I find myself falling down a great spiral that I then have to climb my way back out of. And honestly, I've been spending a very large portion of my time the past few months alone. And while I have had periods of several days where I'm not feeling great mentally, I have yet to slip into that deep depression that I used to, and I have flesh and blood to thank for that. For the past few months, I have spent every single Friday at my LGS playing Flesh and Blood. And this has been the one thing that has quite literally held me together. Because while being with a friend or two is definitely great, I have found that nothing shakes the feelings of dread and depression quite like being with a group of people. And I've never really been into things that have led me to being in groups of people up until my LGS started hosting armories. Friday nights have become the highlight of my entire week. My LGS is in the same place as an arcade and VR place, which also has a bar. And so I usually show up early, having a chat with the bartender for a bit, and then as everybody starts to show up for the event, I typically float around and talk to everyone. And without fail, this always makes me so incredibly happy. It's just so nice interacting with many different people. It quite literally makes me feel alive again. It makes me feel human. All the self-loathing, stress, and misery that I might have been feeling days prior fades away in that one evening, and it's just such a great mental reset. I genuinely consider it to be an absolute blessing to my life. I never went to the LGS to play other games because, quite frankly, the communities kind of suck. With massive games like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, you tend to get a lot more awful people, both because the games are so big they're naturally going to attract all sorts, but also because with nobody having to worry about the game growing or maintaining a community, people will just treat you like disdain without a thought or care in the world. I and many others have truly noticed the difference with Flesh and Blood. When I go to the LGS, literally everyone is friendly and social. No one talks down to you because of a deck choice you made or gets mad because you made a play mistake. I've made several friends over the past couple months, and one who has become an incredibly good friend who I talk to on almost a daily basis. And this is something I simply wasn't getting in any other area of my life. Flesh and Blood has given me a place to go to for real genuine social interaction. It's given me something in life that I was severely lacking. Human beings are social animals. We need other people. And up until my LGS started hosting armories, I was barely social. In fact, after all the lockdowns for the pandemic, I actually became even more of a recluse and had lost a lot of my social skills because of it. But thanks to this wonderful game that James White and LSS have brought all of us, I finally have a place where I feel like I belong. And I cannot express with mere words in a YouTube video how much this genuinely means to me. For the majority of my life, I never really fit in. I'd never felt like people wanted me around. I spent years in the pits of misery, loneliness, and depression, genuinely not believing that I could ever find my way out. And Flesh and Blood has given me a way out. And here's Galahad, who wants to keep interrupting my videos. Mwah. It's the problem. This is why I film in a room without cats.